Thank you, Joe. Good job, man. My name is Josh. I'm an alcoholic. Tonight's speaker, I've had the opportunity to travel to Doylestown, Pennsylvania a couple times. I got to speak there right before the pandemic hit, and I got to speak there about a month ago or 2 months ago, sometime recently. And Ron, I didn't know Ron prior to that. I was actually coming to New Jersey to speak at Shannon's group anniversary a few years ago, and somebody knew Ron and got me on the calendar there as scheduled to speak. And you just never really know what you're going to walk into, just a random deal. And but I really enjoyed his home group. Each time I've been there, it's just been a spiritual atmosphere. It's been a lot of fun, and Ron has always been very kind to me, and I really, really appreciate that. And I'd never heard him share a story before, and I invited him here to share with us tonight. Please help me introduce Ron K from Doylestown, Pennsylvania.
Thanks, Josh. Welcome, everyone. My name is Ron. I'm an alcoholic, and it's nice to be here. This is truly the easier, softer way on Zoom, right? We don't even have to clean anything up or make any coffee. A bunch of great guys in here. A bunch of people that I have some history with, and Shannon and Josh. Thank you for your service. You guys are powerhouses of speakers. That you carry a powerful message, and that's a message of hope and recovery. And I hope that's what I carry tonight. I hope I have a message of hope and recovery, because that's my only goal. Because I know that when I got sober, that I had no hope and I knew nothing about recovery. And I had no desire, where it says, the only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. I never had a desire. I had a desire for everybody to leave me alone. Just get out of my way. Listen, I'm going to hell, and I'm riding this horse all the way into the grave, and that's what I look like my life. I surrendered to alcohol. Even when I came into Alcoholics Anonymous and I started looking around, and I would say, man, I'm not like you people. I'm not like you. Wait a minute. I couldn't comprehend this. You guys wanted to be sober on purpose. Like, no, I'm trying to figure out every deal, try to make this work. And in fact, if you guys would have said, listen, this is what we do. We stay sober Monday to Friday. We party on the weekends, and we'll show you how to do that. Like, okay, I might have even been a little open-minded to that. But you guys are talking about, total abstinence, like what? Like, this is crazy. You got to give me something. And that's been my history. My sobriety date is April 15th, 1986. I did not pick it. I remember hitting multiple rehabs before that. People trying to convince me, I was just so angry, so broken, so hurt, so lost, and so hopeless that I was closed to anybody saying anything. I just couldn't. They used to say you're delusional, you're deluded, and I said, listen, you call me deluded one more time, I'm going to stab you in the eye with this pencil. I'm like so angry, and I'm like, look, you're telling me I know my mind, and it's right. And I see that today when I put my hand out and I try to help other hopeless alcoholics like myself, that I can't penetrate that. Even my own kids. And I'll give you a whole story of my life, and how this program and this disease has impacted it positively and negatively throughout my family. So some of the I'll call them success stories, because I was always taught any celebration of an anniversary premature from me dying sober is a premature celebration. Our book says we have a daily reprieve, and that's important for me to keep that mindset. The goal is to die sober, and I always say that because I have to work a different program if I'm planning on dying sober as opposed to shooting for midnight. I could just fight something until midnight and be like, okay, I got another day. But that type of existence, I will not be able to last. I won't be able to do this deal, not for any prolonged amount of time, before I know where I can get relief. And I'm always going to go back to a drink or some kind of drug, something. Give me something. And that's been the story of my life, even prior to this drink, but prior to even picking up that first drink. And so my wife, she's sober 36 years. My brother-in-law's sober 37 years. My brother had been sober 7 years, picked up a drink, and for 12 years fought to get back here. And a little over 5 years ago, he woke up at home with his wife and kids at home, went down the basement at 5:30 in the morning, hung himself, and took his life. That turned into even more motivation to do what I do. My sister, who had spent a decade on the streets of Kensington. And I remember seeing her, thinking to myself, she will never, ever, ever breathe a sober day alive, ever. I just knew the lifestyle she was living. The streets of Kensington are not kind to women. And she would get arrested and look at some serious time, involved in homicide, all kind of crazy stuff. But anyway, long story short, she would get sober and put together 9.5 years physical absence. I knew along this journey that there was a lot of untreated alcoholism that I couldn't even, again, the delusion or the self-deception, or I don't want it, or the inability to be, the unapproachability of the alcoholic. That's the best way to say it. Unapproachable, nothing I could say or do. And I had 9.5 years to work on her. And I remember, and she had a boyfriend, and they were going on vacation. She gets nervous flying. So she goes to a doctor and explains the situation. And doctors do what they do. They wrote her a prescription for Xanax, which works beautiful for anxiety when you're flying, if you're not an alcoholic or a drug addict. Problem is, she took them off the races, boom, set off the allergy, and that was it. And so her boyfriend would celebrate the 10 years, continue to try to get her back sober, eventually pick up himself. He overdosed and died about 6 months ago, I think that is. These are the stories and the experiences that over the years I get to see. And a lot of times, like when we're celebrating 6 months, a year, 5 years, 10 years, it sounds really good. But what good is it if Ron stays sober 5 or 10 years and then picks up and dies? Or the reason I do AA is not because I fear death, because that's 10 out of 10 people die eventually. Because I fear picking up a drink and spending 10 or 20 years, just like that last week or month before I got sober, feeling like that and living like that for another 10 or 20 years. That's a scary thing. That was painful. That was hard. And I never want to experience that again. So I need to have this program, as important as it was when I first walked through the door. And the guys that I sponsor, I said, what's really going to dictate whether you stay sober or not is the longer you're sober, the less alcoholic you feel. You true. I don't even feel like an alcoholic anymore. I consider myself a free-ranging alcoholic. The world's my playground. Every day is my birthday, Christmas, and New Year's, and that to stay like that, and to also to do AA like your life depends on it. There's a couple things that motivate me to do that. First of all, personal experience through family, and I got more family to even talk about, and I will put that in there later. But my program does not consist of me coming and talking. This is a service I do for AA. My program consists of going to the prisons, to the detox, to the rehabs, to the psych wards, and myself being one of those persons that was straitjacketed in the mental institute, knows experientially what that feels like. And I just remember that. And if you're alcoholic or addict or whatever that is, and you get put in one of those mental institute, and I remember thinking, oh, I'm like this, I'm like strapped up, I'm not like these people, right? And I couldn't see that I was exactly like those people. I fit the criteria to belong in there at that moment. The thing is, once I get physically sober and I get a program, okay, I recover, where people that are mentally ill don't have that option, right? And I remember being in that place, and when I go there today to a psych ward and I look across, and sometimes there's 18, maybe 28 people, and they're sitting there and the drool's hanging out, and I go, by the grace of God, there go I. That would be me, seconds and inches. And everything in my life, I'd like to tell you everything in my life and my recovery is because of my best thinking and my best actions that I took. But God has had his hand throughout the whole thing. I look back on it today, and there's like a billion variables that just had to all line up to store. Everything was just, the things that took place just don't take place today. And I was fortunate enough to go to, in 1986, to go to a rehab, and they mandated that we had to complete our fifth step before we even left there. There's a 28-day rehab, and they kept me 45 days, to give you an idea. Like, I was a little sicker than most. But the point was that I got to sit through a lot of fifth steps, and I got to hear a lot. And I learned a lot about myself and about how I was living. And I no longer felt like this special snowflake, unique person. If you had my life, if you had my childhood, if you had my family, if what happened to me happened to you, you would drink too. And this is the mindset that I had. And I thought that if I could just get these external circumstances lined up and get to a place there, I could actually control my drinking. I literally medicinally took everything that I took in my life. I never said, like, I needed it. I needed to drink when I got to AA. And you guys showed me how not to need, how to replace that with a way of living and a higher power that will change everything about my life. Not only, but nothing physically. It's just my perception of how I went through life, right? And so I'm no longer a victim. Uh, in fact, I'm probably one of the most blessed people I know. And yet I can on paper, I can give you a list of things that you could say, hey Ron, why are you having such a good time? Why are you enjoying life? Right. I got congestive heart failure. I got 20% of my heart, got a pacemaker, defibrillator built in my chest, 4 stents there. I just lost 85% of the motor skills in my right hand, went through 5 surgery with that, a nerve graft. I just blew my shoulder out December 28th. They're replacing my shoulder. I got to go for a hernia operation. My son's out on a run. I'm also a member of Al-Anon. Um, my sister's out doing her deal. My father's dying of cancer. Yeah, all these things, all this life stuff that happens. And at one time, I would think like, that's just a couple of the things that go on, but I felt like a victim in life. In fact, my mother died as a teenager, and I had this victim mentality. And I got so angry at the world. And I'm also a suicide survivor. So I got to a manic, self-consumed place that I just wanted to end life. I didn't, this is it. I don't want no more of this. This is too painful and too hard. It's too hard, life. And think about that. The simplicity of life. I mean, I always teach the guys today. I mean, it's so simple today once you get out the other side to look back and see how easy this is. I said, you have 4 basic needs in life: food, water, air, shelter. That's it. Everything else is a one. If you can get free of all those ones, the world turns into your playground. You know, there's in Buddhism, they teach you dig up and destroy the root of desire, because that is the root of discontentment. As long as I'm wanting anything. And I learned that out of a Courage to Change book they gave in an Al-Anon book. I love the way they put it. It was a question you asked the group for the day. You asked them to fill in the blank, right? And it said, if only blank would happen, I would be happy. So if I asked you guys to fill in the blank, how many blanks would you have, right? And so some people have 1,000 of them. I said, Wilson, I got some bad news for you. If you have just one blank, you're going to be unhappy, all right? So this desire, this one thing, if I can get free of this, if I can abandon myself, the simplicity of this book, where on 164, where it says, abandon yourself to God as you understand God, admit your faults to him and your fellows, clear away the wreckage of your past, right? Like, okay, like that's how simple that is. So through a series of surrenders and self-abandonment, and that happens through the process, through the 12 steps, where it's constantly directing me to welfare of others, help others, help others. And so I'm so consumed with self when I get here and they're like, look, Ron, stop thinking, stop talking, go help somebody, go put your hand out, go get a commitment, right? Go, like, okay, make some coffee, be a greeter. Dude, I love being official greeters. We have official greeters in our group, and it's the greatest job in AA. You can have 0 days and be an official greeter. Like you have a hand, and I almost don't even meet the requirement anymore. You got to know your name. Hi, I'm Ron. Welcome. We love to have you here. Like how simple is that? And you're being of service. And I tell people, if you're planning on making AA a lifestyle and a way of life, I mean, you really do need to get to know everybody. And if you're like me, riddled with fear, people, the first 3 rehabs I went through, they gave me a big book at 11 o'clock. They're like, yeah, go make a meeting. And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to do this AA stuff. And I walk out the door, man, come like 1, 2 o'clock. I'm like, holy crap. I'm going to have to go to these meetings, and they're going to be people in them, and they're going to think at me, and they're going to look at me, and they're going to know. I don't know what they're going to know, but they're going to know. So I can't do this. And I'll be back in the bar before 9 o'clock, 6 o'clock. I'm like, this is too, I can't do this. The fear of walking through the door of an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting was crippling. So the fear stopped me from getting the very help that I need. It's important to realize that when we read our preamble, it says our primary purpose is to stay sober, and help other alcoholics achieve sobriety. So if I walk in a meeting with 30 people in it, logically, 29 of them, or the other 30 besides myself, are there for the specific reason to help me. Yet I'm fearful to walk through the door and even say, like, hey, man, this is kicking my butt. What do I do? Help me. No, I'll sit here and I'll go to meetings and I'll be like, I'll figure this out. I don't want to think I'm an idiot, and like nobody's going to think that. I mean, like that's the crazy thing about it. And I understand I'm talking to myself when a new person walks through the door and a level of fear. And sometimes when I go to a meeting, I look for the person that's like the furthest in the back and like the angriest person, with his arms crossed like this, and like just body language says, stay away from me, I'll kill you. He's got tattoos and muscles. And I sit down on him, I'm like, hey, dude, hey, how you doing? My name's Ron, and welcome. You're in the right place. Come with us, hang with us for a while. We can change your life. We'll show you how it changed ours. And it's very simple. And I think that is more important than anything else that we say or do in our program. As a sponsor, my job is to simplify and explain this. Because if I walk through the doors and it's really complicated, and that's what they used to just say, like, just make a meeting, just make lots of meetings. And yeah, because they didn't want to overload you. But the point was that meetings alone for a guy like me just won't do it. I really had so much. But here's another flip side, is that I've been so physically broken from my alcoholism that it actually opened up my hearing and my willingness just a little bit. And so the way I drank was the goal was to die before I was 25. And I really had no interest in any sobriety or anything like this here. So as I'm going along and as I'm drinking and problems are arising and getting worse, and if I look back through my childhood, I was born in Philadelphia, which doesn't make you an alcoholic, but just growing up, I just felt, what's the word I could really say? I never slept much at all. I don't know about you guys, but and that was back before, like we had three channels and it would shut off at 11 and that was it. And you just had to sit there and stare at the ceiling all night as a little kid. And then I got to they sent me to a Catholic school. I didn't get that crap either. I'm like, I hated everything about it. I hate having to get dressed and wear a tie and comb my hair, follow directions. I don't know about you guys. I'm not good at following directions. I'm like, this place is the worst. Getting yelled at. I was always getting yelled at. But anyway, I was in the 5th grade and I had eating disorders, my first addiction, before I ever even picked up a drink. And I remember my parents saying to me, we got to put you on a diet. I'm like, diet? I'm like, man, are you kidding me? I'm thinking, what's going on in this world, right? And I go to school that day and I'm walking down the hallway to school and I see a key in the door. I just steal it in 5th grade. Turns out to be the master key to the school. And for the next 2 years, I systematically robbed the mission money, the recess money, and anything I could steal for my first drink or drug of choice, that you would call it, which was a Big Mac, French fries, vanilla milkshake, and candy. And that's the way I live. And so when I come into AA and our book describes, when it says selfish and self-centered, and it talks about a spiritual malady, check and check. Like, yeah, I remember my first sponsor going, you're selfish and self-centered. I'm like, yeah, so what? Get over it. Like, yeah, that's how I roll. Like, that's how, isn't that how you're supposed to live? Isn't this every man for themselves? My father's spiritual teaching was 2 simple lines. He says, God helps those that help themselves. Check. I like that one. I'm going to help myself to all your stuff, right? I don't actually have to work for any of mine. And another one he used to say was, God wouldn't have made them sheep if he didn't want them sheared. I'm like, check again. Let's get to work. Let's start, this is this hunter-gatherer mentality, using of people, no value to any system, like no spiritual truth. And just being, and not blaming anybody, but just that they gave me everything they had. And that's what they were taught. And I had to see that all through the steps as I went through this, is that every single parent does the best. They give you everything they can. As a parent myself, I'm a grandfather too. That's crazy. I always tell people, who would let me reproduce, right? Like when you start to hear some of the stuff in my story. But anyway, that just started the beginning of the selfishness and self-centeredness of that. And then it would progress on. Eventually, it would land me in problems and trouble, and I wind up behind bars, and I become a felon, a high school dropout. I mean, it just went on and on and on. And I was just, that was it. I remember being 17 when my father was diagnosed with cancer, and they gave him 3 months to live. And I'm taking him to chemotherapy, and I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, my whole world was just devastated. And I just never realized that people could die before they were like 100. I just never thought about it. And now my whole world's being crushed. I have 2 brothers and 2 sisters. And my mother is cooking dinner while this is all going on. Like we're into it about 30 days or something like that. And she has a massive heart attack at age 38 and dies. And I was like, that's it. I'm done. I'm done. Get me off this planet. If this is what life's about, I'm done. I can't take no more of this. This is horrible. My whole world. I was a mama's boy. I don't know if any of you guys were mama's boys, but it's so funny that I look back today. Every morning I get up, I'd have coffee and cigarettes with my mother. It's funny how years later I get sober, come into AA and have coffee and cigarettes. I used to smoke back then. And it was like God gave me what I was missing, gave me my family. And I think that's the biggest gift in our program. He says, I feel that God says, Ron, listen, your family's not going to be available. Maybe they're not ever going to be available. But we're going to give you a family of a couple million people that are going to reach across the world that you'll never be alone again. And that's pretty powerful. That when you connected it to this fellowship and the others, I mean, I can walk through anything today. And that's how that journey went along there. And when my mother died, like I said, the level of depression and the level of a desire to just stop pain. And no matter how much I drank, took, smoked, whatever it took, it just wasn't doing it. I just couldn't I just wanted to die, just end this. And so I understand that experientially, that hopeless state of mind and body. And I would get arrested. And I was one of those guys that when I got arrested, for the first day or two, it was painfully separation. But I had this sense of like, oh, thank God, I needed a rest, man. I just couldn't stop myself, right? And then I would like have a 5-year sentence given to me. And because of my wife and my father putting up a bunch of money, get me a really good lawyer. They got me a good deal. And they said, listen, all you got to do is give us 2 urines a month, right? For 5 years and you can get out. I'm like, well, I'm not the sharpest crayon on the box, but I'm not an idiot. Okay, I'll give you those 2 urines a month. Just let me out of here, right? And I meant it. I truly did. I'm like, okay, I'll give them the 2 urines. I didn't understand that. I didn't understand that first step, that I didn't have power, choice, and control. I thought I could. I thought I could actually do that. I never for a moment. I see guys today that like just max out on a sentence because they know they're powerless. If I get out, I'll violate and I'll be back here again. Why go through it? I'm just going to max out. I didn't have that concept at the time. I actually thought I could. But anyway, we joke around about triggers, but there's no real triggers in AA. But my trigger was the same as when I bring big book studies into the prison. I said, listen, I know what your trigger is because it's mine. The minute they go click to the door, my keen alcoholic mind says, 14 days to the first urine, 2 beers, maybe 3, 4 at the most, but no more because listen, I got to give a clean urine. I take those 2 beers, the shift would happen in my mind. And then I'll see them in hell when they catch me. And that's how I would wind up back there again. And every time I get to I'll fight to the end and I'm going down blazing and they're never taking me alive and like all this crazy crap. And that's what happens in the shift in my mind when I couple drinks, right? And I'd wind up back there again. How'd I get there? And okay, what do I got to do? And just keep cycling it through. I'd wind up getting shot. It just got ugly. And I wound up actually, the funny thing, like me and my wife, we've been together over 40 years, married 38 years. And that's only because of these 12 steps in this program. It's impossible for a selfish, self-centered guy like myself to stay married to anybody for any amount of time if I'm untreated in this world. I'm way too selfish. Probably even with the 12 steps and living this program to the best of my ability, day in and day out, I'm probably too selfish for most people, but I've been blessed. But anyway, I get married young. I remember meeting this girl. She seemed like a decent girl. I said, I really try this marriage stuff. I'm like, what is it? Till death do you part. That's like what, 5 years? I'll be out in 2 to 3 with good behavior. And I swear to you, the joke is, I tell guys, no, that was my actual thinking. I was like, I didn't take it seriously. I'm like, what, 2 or 3, 5, whatever. Gonna get married. About a year and a half in, my wife says the one thing you never say to an alcoholic. She says, you got to stop drinking. Boom. I grabbed her like this. I threw her through that front door. Get out of my life. You're ruining my life. You're nagging me. Just get out. Now, I was like, thank God. Now I'm free. I can drink and do the way I want. And there was nothing to even keep me on a little bit of it was a mess. And of course, like I said, the consequences continued. So what would change, as I multiple times through those rehabs, and I remember getting out of here's a good story for you. Now, listen, they're trying to convince me I'm an alcoholic in rehab. Anyway, I get thrown out of this one rehab for making wine. And they're like, dude, you're out of here. I'm like, listen, I'm not an alcoholic. My roommate is, but I'm not. I mean, I can drink. And thinking about the person that needs the rehab the most, me, like I'm so delusional, but I can't say it. I actually don't believe I'm an alcoholic, but I'm making wine in a rehab. And that's stuff books are written out of. Like you can't even make this up, how broken I am. Anyway, so when I did get in there, the difference that would happen in 1986 was just total. When they say your scorecard reads 0, it was beyond 0. I was so broken. I tried everything. I tried every potion, lotion, cream, and salve. I'm like, hey, I had an uncle that came back from Vietnam, a heroin addict. He went on methadone. I'm like, oh, let me try that stuff. You know what I mean? Maybe this will cure my alcoholism, man. And Bill's story where it says, they gave me sedatives the next morning, found me taking sedatives and gin. And that's my story. I'm like, well, yeah, it works for like a week. And then next thing I know, I'm back. I want to drink is really what I want. I want to drink. And I want to drink. And then whatever else I keep adding, it just keeps making it even more complicated. And just speeding up the inevitable bottom or death of my alcoholism. And so as I go into this program and I come in, I knew in 1986, there's no way in a million years that Ron is ever staying sober. This is impossible. It's inconceivable. In fact, I think of the mindset of going to a 28-day program. Think about that, 28 days. I'm like, oh my God. And only because I didn't want to get sober. It's that my lawyer said, look, you got to give me something to go to court on. You got to go to a rehab. I'm like, oh crap, I'm at rehab, not 28 days. Oh my God, it's like 28 years in my mind. And I'm thinking, how am I going to do this, right? How am I going to, oh crap. And so I come up with a great plan. So I smuggle in 90 Valiums. I figure 3 a day for 28 days and a couple extra in case I need it. I'm getting sober. Like this is it. You're not, I got to have something. You can't just like take everything. And I still to this day, I think back, I was probably like the most spiritual dude for like 3 days in that rehab, like chill. I've just been to the other side or whatever that is, once that stuff wore off. Whatever I ran through, God only knows. But then I was left with myself, and I was forced into sobriety. So a power greater than myself got me to that point. And what I started to talk about in the beginning of this talk is that we had these big meetings on Fridays and Saturdays. These guys would come in and they would carry a message of hope and recovery. They would talk about where they've been, and they're talking about their lives now and their sobriety and their sober. One guy used to come in on 3,112 days today, here's the funny thing too. This one guy goes, 90 meetings in 90 days. And if you're not happy, we'll refund your misery. Well, I'm thinking there, I'm a real alcoholic. I'm like, does he know who he's talking? There's 250 people in the meeting. Does he know who he's talking to? I'll show him. He refund my misery? Nobody refunds my misery. I'll kill that guy. Like, this is, the resentment fueled me to do AA. It's insane. You can't make this up. So, I can give you some things in a meeting where a guy said to me one time, he says, Ron, I was in you chaired the first meeting I ever been to, I'm like, my mind says, okay, I got to find out what I said. Was this guy sober all this time, right? I said, so it was a beginner's meeting. I said, okay. I said, what do you remember about the meeting? He says, well, not a lot. I just remember at the break, I went out to smoke a cigarette and a guy lit it for me. I was like, yeah. He's like, I thought that was so thoughtful and impactful. I'm thinking like I said some major words of like, something that like the heavens opened up. Somebody lit his cigarette, a kind gesture, a gesture of love. And just, so it's so powerful. And so me trying to figure out what to say, let God, hey, listen, just I come with a state of love and love. I just love you to death. And that's it, unconditional love. And so the people that if I look back today, there was so many people that selflessly gave themselves to me, that unconditionally loved me, and I was unlovable, meaning that I was just, there was no way in a million years Ron was going to do this. And so how many times in AA, I don't know about you guys, but I kind of take that inventory in meetings, especially beginners meeting. Oh, that he'll never make it. He'll never make it. Oh, he's going to make it. He's not going to, like, you ever do that? Like, so I'm like at the racetrack, like I'm betting on him in my head in a sense. And usually the craziest, worst off people that you're like, they'll never get in sober. They're the ones that stay sober. The smart ones that have, like the old saying in AA, we buried a lot of geniuses in AA, but we never buried one moron. And so I got to be out of ideas and finally surrender and follow just a simple program that's laid out in front of me. Follow these directions, follow, they used to say, stick with the winners. Of course, that's a tricky direction. Winners. Yeah, I'm looking at guys wearing Rolexes and driving Corvettes and pinky rings. Yeah, well, a lot of girls. That's yeah. But we're talking about the people today, the people that are free, happy, joyous, and free, living the life, have a strong foundation in AA, doing service work, helping others, showing up for the reason to help others. You see them active in AA. The amazing thing about AA is that I'll never figure this out, is that the more I give, the more I get. And all through life, I was always like, the more I get, Ron. I'll never figure that out on my own. This altruistic, selfless way of living, like, who, it makes no sense to my alcoholic mind. And so the desperation, I follow it and start to do it. And I start to touch on a few of those rewards as I go in recovery. And I go, maybe these guys, my heart, my soul starts to get touched. It starts to come alive. It starts to feel some of those feelings. And just like a drink or a drug, it wants more of them. If I never get to experience them, if I'm not willing enough to at least say, okay, let me give this crap a try, because that's the way my mind says, this is all crap. These people are stupid. Them steps are stupid. God, what the heck? What? Like a bunch of Bible thumpers out of their mind. Like, this is my judgmental, like, that's not going to get me. I'm here for cash and prizes. I'm not here for like spiritual. Like, what? Yeah. Spiritual. I'll show you spiritual. Like I'll be on my best behavior walking to the door, but man, my head's like, whoa. Like the aspirations in my mind growing up, and I look back on it today. We had a speaker a couple weeks ago. He knew he wanted to be a pilot. And he went to school and he became a pilot. And anyway, he's an alcoholic. But the point was, and I just reflect back on my teenage years. I'm thinking to myself, man, my aspirations were to own a strip bar and then someday own a whole strip of strip bars. Like, I could drink and have sex all the time. Like, that's my idea of like successful. Fly a plane. Who would want to do that? That sounds boring. Like, I want to party, like, and have fun. And these are my aspirations. So I walk into AA like that. They're like, dude, you're shot out. Where did you get this programming from? You're a mess. My best thinking got that, right? Driven by selfishness, right? And I look at these people, like, we used to call them the dorks and the nerds, right? I remember there was a time, now I'm drinking and running the streets like I do. And you remember, if you can line up with this, that first light in the morning when the birds, like, and people are getting in their cars and getting on the elevated trains and buses to go to work. I'm like, look at them losers going to work, them idiots. They don't know what they're doing. Like, this is my mindset. It had to justify my existence of this night crawler. And that's like how I existed, right? So in there, in this rehab, there was a number of factors. Number one, Vince DiPasquale, love him to death. He used to say, I used to go to his lectures every Sunday, but he used to say, you got to make meetings till 2 days after you're dead. And I was like, ah. Now you imagine being like, I'm like, 2 days, what's with this guy? I mean, like, already I got to, 2 days after I'm dead, man, maybe I'll give you maybe a couple months. I can't conceive of that, these long periods of thinking. But I understand it experientially what he was doing. He was laying that groundwork and saying, you have to be connected. See, I need the meetings, not because of meetings, because I got to stay connected to my primary purpose, stay sober, help other alcoholics achieve sobriety. I got to be in and around step work, in and around big book studies. I got to be constantly reminded Ron, you're living by spiritual principles, and these are the directions. I don't do. I wish I could tell you I could study them and say I thought this. I'll come in, work really hard. I'll get super sober. Check. I'll learn everything there is, and I'll just go live my selfish life again. Like that's what I believe. So the guys I sponsor, I said, listen, this is the deal. I give my life to God and AA, and in return, I have a life. So I give my life for my life. The freedom of alcohol comes with a price. Am I willing to do this? And there's so many people that are not willing to do this. They're not willing to devote their life. If you really look at the directions in our book, it's saying, Ron, become an apostle for God, dedicate your life to God and helping others. Whoa, that's a heavy directive there. Don't hit me that out of the door. But to hang some of those cash and prizes, like I need to hear some of that. I need to hear. But what I really, the true rewards of the program sometimes are so misrepresented. And I remember I got a million stories. I could probably talk for like days of all the experiences, certain things people say that just etched in my brain. And there's this 21-year-old girl. I'm in an AA meeting. She puts her hand up. She says, hi, my name's so-and-so. And, I got sober a year ago or something like that. And she said, a year ago, I didn't think I'd ever get married and have kids. And the rewards of the program, I'm engaged and I'm pregnant. And I'm thinking to myself, if you come to AA to get married and pregnant, you came to the right place, but that's not a reward. That's like a byproduct of some extreme selfishness. Like the rewards are truly, if I had to say what they are to me today, they've constantly changed along this journey from that selfish, self-centered materialism person to a spiritual person living this, is peace and serenity and unconditional love for everybody on the planet. Now, you would offer me that day one, like peace and serenity, unconditional love. What am I going to do with that crap? First of all, I call it crap for one reason. I've never, ever experienced peace and serenity in my life. I don't even know what it is. Your peace and serenity, unconditional love. I never experienced that either, right? Not even in my life giving it, because I never had any experience with it. I truly look at my life. I was about 5 years sober when I had my first son. And most selfish thing I ever did in sobriety, by the way, reproduce. But anyway, we'll get back to that. But I remember thinking that I truly, at that moment, knew what unconditional love was. Up until that moment, I never did. I thought I'm like, I knew it as a concept, but I couldn't experience it. So everything is experience in AA. We can tell you a bunch of stuff. I can read a bunch of stuff, but until I experience it, I can't really understand it or live it, right? And so I got that experience with that unconditional love. If I can get to a place of unconditional love for everyone, and if you look at what it directs us to do in the resentment prayer, in the directions to get free of resentment, it's saying, look at the person who's spiritually ill, ask God to remove your anger, and see how you can be helpful to them. So I do that a million times, and then eventually it just becomes the way I live. I know, my kids taught me how to make memes. I say, you never teach an alcoholic how to make memes. I got like Neo. Remember the one where he's holding the bullets up, where he stops them, and it says, work the steps, and you won't have to dodge resentments. And in our 12 and 12, what's it say? The spiritual axiom, when I am disturbed, there's something wrong with me. And I had to ingrain that in my mind until it became second nature. When I'm disturbed, why? I go, why is Bob or Steve or Mary disturbing me? The governor, whatever, the snowplow man, the guy at Wawa, doesn't matter. Why am I being disturbed by their life, their behaviors, their actions? They're their actions. And if I can get to a place of this unconditional love and compassion, I can get free of the suffering. And then the byproduct is the freedom of the bondage of self. And then the world turns into my playground. Boom. It's pretty simple, right? I think that is. I'm like, wow, I'll take it. Let me try it. And even when you present that to me like that, I'm like, oh, this ain't gonna work. But then again, I remember my buddy Chris one time. He's at some convention. We're sitting there and he's speaking. He says, I work the steps just to show people that they don't work. And if I look at it truthfully, in my mind, I said, I'm going to do these steps. They ain't going to work. There's no way these things are going to work. This is stupid, but I'm going to just do it because they tell me to do it. And I'm going to say these stupid prayers and I'm going to do all the things they tell me, but it ain't going to work on a guy like me. I can't figure out how it works. My mind can't figure it out because it doesn't even comprehend it at that point, right? But as I go through it and experience it, then I understand how extremely selfish I was when I got here and how much I was consumed with self and all I thought about was me. And think about this, everybody gets sober and their life is burnt to the ground, right? And today, number one, probably the biggest problem we have is that people are walking into rehabs and, they didn't throw the kind of drugs they throw at these people today. It's readily available. And that can be a problem because of the fact that had I had an easier, softer way, had it been offered to me, I probably would have taken it. I got to say, honestly, I didn't have the power to say no. I don't know how to stay sober. And they're saying, here, take this. You're medically diagnosed with depression. Check, I was, right? Anxiety, generalized anxiety, check. Fear, check. I mean, you put me on the couch today, I could probably walk out with a half a dozen or a dozen meds. Like, yeah, this guy's, like the truth. But what am I really suffering from? Well, as I go through this book and I apply this, I find the untreated alcoholism where it arises all through my life. We talk about the bedevilments on 52 and getting free of them in sobriety, right? And turning that little by slowly. So through a series of surrenders and the journey, little by slowly, there's been such a transformation. And even to the fact of, I tell guys to just ask God to remove the profanity from all your language. And they're like, what's that got to do with it? Well, I said, we're on a spiritual journey here. So you can Google the negative effects of profanity on spirituality. There is. But more so, we're growing along these spiritual lines and we're trying to practice these principles in all our affairs. And when I got sober, my sponsor would say, listen, Ron, you got to knock that off. You got to stop that profanity. I'm like, blank them, blank everybody. This is how I talk. And, to give an example, I would say a 10-word sentence. It would be like blank, cake. Like this is how this street mentality. And it's so funny. My wife said even today, she says, if anybody on the planet can stop using profanity, anybody can. That's how bad I was in her eyes, And so the journey, little by slowly, that I go on the spiritual journey, the transformation. See, that's really a big part of this. Okay. Do I want to be the person I was when I walked through the door? I've lived in Doylestown now for 29 years. I belong to the Doylestown Racket Club. I played tennis with CEO of Pfizer, Merck, and the owner of the tennis club. Like I'm invited there because of how I live, how I walk, how I talk, how I dress, how I carry myself. I'm no longer that animal that I explained that was running through the streets and in behind bars and winding up in psych wards. I'm a responsible member of society today. For the last 35 plus years, here's the true rewards. I haven't had a set of handcuffs on me or arrested for anything. I haven't been divorced. Haven't got a DUI. Haven't been shot in over 35 years. Oh, there's some pretty good rewards, right? Like think about that. It's the things I didn't get. I've had a driver's license with insurance for, 30 something years without interruption. I have perfect credit, zero debt today. I pay my bills. Oh, it's that peace of mind, living clean. Like these are things that I thought I could never straighten out. And when we talk about the amends process, which is such a critical part, me personally, making the personal amends was never difficult for me. I really had a desire to change that and make that up. But when it came to the financial amends, whoa, we're not going there, right? Like that was like, look, I owed $80,000 on some credit card scam. I owed like $19,000 on my driver's license to get it back. Sponsor's like, you got to pay back that $80,000. Wait a minute, here's the best. My aftercare, after I got out of the rehab, I'm living in the Salvation Army. Cigarettes are about 75 cents a pack, and I can't even afford a pack of cigarettes, right? And he's telling me I got to pay back 80 grand. Now you could imagine the language I use. I'm like, are you blank and retarded? Like, are you kidding me? There's something wrong with you? Did you get hit on your head or something? I says, I'm in the Salvation Army. I can't afford it back. I said, "Will you pay this back?" I said, I didn't even got a job. He said, this is what changed my life. And it was very impactful. And after trying to convince me for a while, he said, let me ask you something. What if God gave you a job? Would you pay it back then? I said, no. He said, think about that. He said, what if he gave you a job where you had extra money? Would you pay it back then? I said, well, maybe I give some back to it. I said, I didn't have a job. I said, yeah, I'll tell you what, I will pay it back if I get a job. What happens? 2 days later, I get a job. So I start mailing in trivial amounts of money on this, like 25 hours a month. But I'm living spiritual. I'm working hard. I'm going to this job and I'm getting promotions and moving up. And before you know it, I'm making some stupid money. It took me about 6.5 years and I had all that paid off. Everything. I was like, looking back at the time that when he mentioned that to me, I didn't think I'd be able to pay that back in like 3 lifetimes, the way I was living and what I had at that time. And today it's a major part of when I tell you I have zero debt and perfect credit, because I've been to the other end of the spectrum and I never want to live like that again. And once I got out of there, I live within my means, below my means. And these were just some of the things that I've learned on this journey today. I mean, over time, to get free of this bondage is, and I think also, and here's another thing that is really crucial in my story, is that I was happy, like, because I owed all this money. I couldn't even put money in a bank. I would have been happy to carry my bank account in my pocket with me the rest of my life. That was my best thinking. I just won't get a bank account, right? And so I wouldn't be able to buy houses. I wouldn't be able to buy cars, loans, or have savings, or any normal things that normal people do. And that was my best thinking. But what happens is, by doing that, I was able to repair my credit, repair everything, get all those things, buy property, start businesses, invest, have all kinds of crazy material, successes, and come to a point where in just about towards the end of my grandmother's life, she just couldn't do what she did, take care of herself that much. And I remember saying, look, Grandma, come on, move with me. She was like, I think she was 89 at the time. She stayed there for a couple of years. It was beautiful. It was perfect. And one morning we're having coffee. She gets up. I'm on the computer. Hey, Graham, get a cup of coffee. She walks over there and boom, she hits the floor. I didn't know it. She broke her hip. They replaced the hip, the femur, all kind of crap. Anyway, they sent her to a rehabilitation style nursing home thing. And they said, listen, she's going to be there 60, 90 days. She has insurance. It's all good. Okay, great. So she's there 60, 90 days and they re-x-rayed her. And they said, listen, Ron, there's no healing going. I'm like, oh. Anyway, so they said, well, her insurance runs out. I'm like, okay. I said, well, let me ask you something. What's it cost to keep her here? $300 a day. Okay. Just let her stay there a little longer. Let's get this figured out. I'll cover the bill, right? And what had happened was she would stay there another 2.5 years until her passing. And I remember looking back and thinking to myself, this is all a result of how I lived and being able to afford to be able to do that for my grandmother. I'd like to tell you that I didn't have some selfish thoughts along the way, like, oh my God, that was a nice boat I just gave away. But in comparison to what I was able to be of service, that was so priceless to me, to be able to do that for her, to make her comfortable in this nice place when she was like that. And these are just some of the rewards. And I don't have a lot of time. There's so many stories. I would have 3 sons. They would wind up in addiction, and 18 rehabs later. My oldest son, I had to wash my hands on him. That's how I got into Al-Anon. And I remember walking in that first Al-Anon meeting, and this is so amazingly powerful. I'm like losing my mind. It was a Monday noon. I walk in, just happened to be 12 women sitting around and me, right? And I'm sitting there, and it just happened. They all shared first, and they got to me. I'm like, hi, my name's Ron. and I'm an alcoholic, and I'm sorry. Like, I thought I was apologizing for every alcoholic on the planet. Like, oh my God. And I'm thinking, I'm like 20 something years sober. I thought I really knew the impact of, but it wasn't until I experienced that. And so the guys and girls that I get to meet and sponsor along the way, I suggest to them, whether they're in Al-Anon or AA, if you're in Al-Anon, go make a half a dozen or a dozen AA meetings. If you're in AA, go make a half a dozen or a dozen Al-Anon meetings. You will run back to make those amends when you see how it affects and impacts the family. And, even experientially with it wasn't until my father used to always say, wait till you have kids, they're going to pay you back for everything you did to me, right? And I remember my son being in rehab and thinking, oh my God, this is going full circle experientially. And he almost, he came as close as you possibly could to dying after 18 rehabs. And I said, look, you're going to take a pinch down in Philly, and you're no Philly guy. You're a Doylestown kid. You can't survive down there. Anyway, he's like, Pop, yeah. Anyway, he get arrested down there, called me up one day. Pop, yo, let me out of here. I'm like, let you out of here? I didn't put you there. I said, I told you where you're going to be. I said, I told you. He said, yeah, but I said, I told you what that place is like. He's like, yeah, Pop, but it's different when you're here. I said, yeah, I know. You have to experience it, right? And all these times I would be taken to local AA in Doylestown, and they would say, Pop, we don't want to go to any more of these AA meetings. We're tired of these people complaining about their problems. We got our own problems. I'm like, yo, that's not AA. I said, we have 12 steps of Big Book. I said, you apply these 12 steps in your life and get a program, you'll never complain again. You get a sponsor, a home group, a commitment, and 12 steps in God in your life, you won't have a complaint. They're like, Pop, you're an idiot. I'm like, I'm just like, I'm stunned. I'm powerless. I'm shocked. And so anyway, after his 18 rehabs and he's in jail, I said, I'll tell you what, I was done with you. I washed my hands, and I'll tell you what I will do for you. It's one last thing. This is it. I said, I'll tell you what, I'll send you to a Big Book rehab in Texas. And I remember him going, Big Book, Texas. He hangs up on me. I was like, wow, that was easy, right? So I just went about my day. 48 hours later, I get the call. Bring Pop. Yeah, what's up? What's the weather like in Texas? Oh, a lot nicer than where you're at. But he would go there to this Big Book rehab. And within 90 days, he's living in a recovery house. He's been through the steps. He's sponsoring guys. He has 3 jobs. For the first time in his life, he's 23 years old. And then my wife says, listen, we got to bring him home. I said, oh, don't touch this. This is the stars lining up, right? But anyway, she brings him home at 100 days, sober, 103 or something. And we went down to the airport to pick up my son. Now, this is my biological son that I raised for 23 years, me and my wife. And I'm here to tell you that the man that we met that day that got off that plane, I had never met in my entire life. The power of God and those 12 steps in the transformation of that Big Book and helping others and having a spiritual program of action gave me the son that I was always destined to have. It was so powerful. I mean, you ask my wife, what do you think of these 12 steps in this Big Book? She takes so many women through the steps, and it's a blessing to have a partner that lives this program, where it says in Bill's story, my wife and I abandon ourselves to helping other alcoholics of their problems. And that's when you have that side by side, you can't ask for anything more in a relationship. And I hope maybe someday you get to experience that. It's not, we've had a full life. It's been an amazing life. And I'm running short on time here, but I can't, everybody has a journey in this program. And the sad thing, little by slowly, the guys I sponsor hate that. Little by slowly. I say, watch the movie, What About Bob, right? But AA is baby steps. Little by slowly. There's two steps to the steps, and that's what I never realized. The first step of the step is learning them. The second step of the step is learning how to apply and live them to all areas of your life for the rest of your life. That's a lifelong job. Oh my God, what a task. And I'm here to report that as long as I'm living on the beam, living these 12 steps in my life and putting the welfare of others ahead of myself. I have peace, serenity, happiness, the joy of living, and more importantly, meaning and purpose. For my guy that wanted to wake up dead every day, I get up every morning. It's my birthday, Christmas, and New Year's. Let's go. God, what do you got today? I'm gonna make it count. I always tell people, when I die, don't be sad. Throw a party, man. Throw a party, because that's the life I've gotten because of this. Thanks for having me.